Hey everybody, if you're new to this channel, my name is Adrian Fields and I'm an expat entrepreneur who's been living in Bali for the past 4 years and has been in the fashion industry for the past 15. In this video today, I'm going to share with you how I got to where I am today with my fashion business, how I hustled to make a career for myself in fashion, having come from a small town with no connections. If that sounds interesting to you, then pour yourself a glass of wine because this is going to be a long video. We have a lot to cover. So let's start from the very beginning. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, and if you're not familiar with the United States, New Jersey is basically the shittiest state in the union. I say that a little bit flippantly, but it's kind of true. So New Jersey is only famous for what it's in proximity to, being New York City or other cities like Philadelphia, but there's no city or culture in New Jersey itself, and obviously New Jersey is kind of famous for bad things like the Jersey Shore and Guidos and all of that kind of stereotypical stuff. I didn't grow up in a town like that. I grew up in a, nice suburban whatever town, but in no way creative. And nobody in my family worked in a creative industry. I come from a family of professionals. Literally everybody is a doctor or a lawyer. Both my parents are doctors, and everybody is either a doctor or a lawyer. So there was kind of an expectation, an unspoken expectation, that you would go into some type of professional path and not a creative one. Now that said, I have a really fabulous aunt who I always looked up to, and she was a wealthy lawyer, self-made, living in New York, and immaculately dressed all the time. And I really always looked to her as someone whose life I wanted to emulate, in just the sense of style that she had and all of that. So I kind of oriented myself from a very young age, dreaming of living in New York City and having a more fabulous and sparkling life than what surrounded me in New Jersey. So I would say that everything started for me at 18 years old. I decided to go to New York University as opposed to some of the other colleges that I was accepted to. I was a good student and I had a choice of several good schools, but I chose NYU because I wanted to be in New York City. That was kind of the draw, again, bringing me back to that dream. Now, the summer before I started university, I actually was in New York and I was living in my aunt's place, and I got my very first kind of real job. And this is where nepotism played a little bit of a role. So I had a family member who married the daughter of the CEO of a really big PR company in New York, and they were able to get me some kind of like desk job, just kind of as an entry and a way to earn some money that summer before starting university. So I had this job that wasn't really anything special. It was like answering phones and just kind of doing nothing, but at least it allowed me to earn a paycheck and be in New York City. And all the money that I would earn, I would go shopping and go to like the Barney's warehouse sale or whatever. Meanwhile, living in my aunt's place in a really nice apartment. So I was really lucky. But again, I had this passion for fashion that was inside of me, and ever since probably my early teens, I subscribed to GQ and later even Vogue, even though I thought, I might be gay because I'm interested in fashion. At some point I was just like, I don't care, this is what I like and I'm gonna follow it. So this will date me for sure, but I've talked about in other videos that I'm not as young as I would like to be or as I look. So at 18 years old, I started a blog, and it was about men's fashion, and I did it kind of anonymously, not using my name, but I would just write about fashion and write about fashion shows and this and that. And this was the early time of the internet. Like, this is obviously before Instagram, so the way to express yourself was through blogging. And it actually started to get me a teeny little bit of attention. Like, I would sometimes get pitched by PR brands to do something or whatever, but again, the important thing was just that I was putting stuff out there. And this is going to kind of be a reoccurring theme that I really believe in, which is you put stuff out in the universe and things will come back. So I was putting out this energy, of my love for fashion, just because I needed some outlet for it. And at that time, it was through a blog. So cut to starting university. The summer ended, that PR internship ended, and my parents basically cut me off because they knew that I had been so profligate with the money that I had earned, which was not even a lot of money from this PR job. And they said, because you spent all your money on stupid things, we're not going to give you any money for university. We're only going to give you the money for, essentials like books and whatever. And if you want any money, even if you want to get a Metro card, you're going to have to earn money. So this kind of put me in a very stressful situation because I was a full-time university student, but now I was going to have to make money to basically live in New York. Anybody who's even visited New York knows that it's an expensive city. Every time you leave your house, money is just kind of falling, off of you. And I was not prepared to live, like a truly, truly poor college student. So I started applying to jobs. The first thing, actually, I did another PR internship, this time though at a fashion PR company, and it was unpaid, just with like a stipend. So basically it's like slave labor. But I did that because, again, I'm trying to take steps towards getting, closer to fashion. And I think also I was able to earn some school credit as well for that internship. And I think one of the reasons that I was accepted to that internship was, one, because of my social media / blogging experience, and two, obviously for that PR company that I had worked for over the summer. So I did that for maybe a month or something like that, but I really needed money. Like, I had no money, and I was, what am I gonna do? So meanwhile, I'm constantly scouring Craigslist, looking for some kind of paid job that's within the fashion sphere or within the marketing sphere. And one day I see a posting, and it's for marketing assistant for this new fashion magazine. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the perfect job. So I write the most incredible cover letter that's super personalized. And that's another thing, you guys, that I just want to make a quick interlude, is that now that I actually am on the other side of this and I hire people, I really do take a look at a cover letter. And if it's some generic cover letter that says, "Dear hiring manager," immediately delete it. Anyway, so I wrote an extremely personalized cover letter, and I said how much I love fashion. I think it's amazing what you're doing, and this and that. Lo and behold, I got an interview, and then I got that job. So this online fashion magazine ended up being the thing that really put my foot through the door of the fashion world, because now I had a little bit of credentials, because this website looked a bit more professional than the blog that I had. And so we started getting invited to certain like media events to cover stuff. And because I was a writer, the editor / founder of this website would send me out to do things. And so I started going out to a bunch of events, basically anything that I could get invited to. Like the opening of an envelope in New York, I was there because I just wanted so badly to be in that world. Mind you, I'm still 18 years old. I'm still enrolled in New York University. But very quickly, I'm getting wrapped up in this world. And actually, my role shifted from marketing to editorial as the kind of website shifted focus, and they kind of got rid of a couple people, and I was the last man standing. And so, as I said, I would go to all of these different events and I would write, and that's how I was making connections. And the thing is, in fashion, it's really about who you know. I mean, that is the most important thing, and just having visibility. So at the time, I was also quite flamboyant, and I was becoming more and more flamboyant. I would dress in a way that kind of got attention. So I would go to these parties, and I'm a naturally shy person, but I would go, and because my kind of outfit would do the talking for me, a lot of the times that's how I would, start a conversation or meet people or whatever. And at that time too, I started getting photographed a lot. I think the way that stuff works in New York, or at least it used to when I lived there, and was in this industry like 15 years ago, is these photographers, they're at the same events all the time. So when they recognize you, and if you have a little bit of a reason to be there, and if you're dressed in a kind of flashy way, then they start taking your pictures, they know who you are. And so I was getting photographed really frequently at these events. I started to make a name for myself within this little fashion bubble. And already by the time of my second semester, first semester, the end of the first semester, the editor of this online magazine decided that we were going to go to New York Fashion Week. You can imagine how excited I was, out of my skin even. I could not believe at 18 years old, I was going to be at New York Fashion Week. So we got these media credentials, which at the time was really easy to get, again, because the industry was changing. They didn't really know how to deal with these online publications. So you could get media credentials. That didn't mean that you got invited to a show, but you could kind of wait outside for standing room. And then a lot of times what we would do is we would get in the standing room line, but then you could crash the front row, because if there was a seat open, as soon as they let you in, you would go run to that front row. And unless that seat was reserved for a VIP and that VIP was actually there, they often didn't move you out. So I was going, again, New York Fashion Week, sitting front row at a bunch of shows, being around celebrities, going to parties, all of this stuff. You can imagine that my studies at NYU were not that intriguing to me. And within the second year, again, still working at this online magazine, I kind of left my studies aside. And I also realized it wasn't going to make any difference, that it wasn't as if Vogue was going to come knocking on my door just because I had a college degree. I realized that I was going to have to make my own way, make the connections, make the opportunities for myself. So I think about in the second year of working for this online magazine, I was maybe at this point 20 years old, and that's like accumulated 2 years of going to all these parties and making a name for myself. The editor of this online magazine did not like that I was kind of overshadowing her, that I was becoming more known than the online magazine, like getting a little bit too big for my britches, so to speak. So she fired me. And I think it was around the same time that I also decided to drop out of NYU. So I'm kind of in a crisis right now, and I'm not sure what to do, not sure what my direction is. I know I want to be in New York. I know I want to work in fashion, but I'm kind of desperate because I need money. So I get the first full-time job and only full-time job I ever had in my life that was like at this college review book company. I forget the name of it, but very quickly I was fired because I'm just not made to work in an office. Now, I think, again, if you look back on life, sometimes everything really does happen for a reason, and there's a kind of synchronicity and a timing that the universe has of its own. So after getting fired from that job, again, I'm like looking for jobs, something in fashion, but I'm also really kind of embarrassed because I was sort of known in New York City, and I was feeling like, here I am, this like semi-known figure in New York society. I've been even on the cover of the New York Post, having been called the new scribes of high society, and I'm like looking for some entry-level jobs. So it was a very weird time for me in my life, like, you know, again, just feeling ashamed and embarrassed and not sure really what was going to happen. But I really believe there was some greater plan. So again, go back to Craigslist, looking for jobs, and I see a job I remember, and it was something again with like internet marketing, and I apply for it, and this changed my life. So I go in for an interview, and they look at my resume, and I guess they Googled me, they saw all these photos of me, and the owner of this internet marketing company, she did not hire me for a job at her company. What she did do, which is even better, and I will be forever indebted to this woman for the rest of my life, she gave my resume to her husband. And her husband had just been named the new editor-in-chief of Vibe magazine, which had just been resurrected from the dead. So if you're not familiar with Vibe, if you're not from America, or if you're not like of a certain age, Vibe was a really trailblazing hip-hop lifestyle magazine from the 90s, was really famous and influential back then, and some new company had bought it and revived it. She gave my resume to her husband, and he got me my first, I would even say this is my first real job in fashion, because this was for a national printed magazine. I got a job doing editorial. So it started out as I was doing all of their online fashion blog posts, and then the job kind of morphed with my interests because they kind of gave me some space to do that. Now this was a job I barely was earning any money, but it didn't matter because more importantly it provided me access and it provided me with a platform. So again, now I was getting invited to even better parties and better events, and PR people really recognized me now as someone who was not just like a joke or not just someone, you know, like a wannabe, but someone from a real publication. So again, I'm getting invited to now even better, like real Fashion Week shows and having a seat and all of this stuff. So it was a really, really big step up for me. And I also want to mention at this time, I'm 20 years old. I actually think, and maybe now I'm wrong or maybe it's changed, but I believe that at that time, I was the youngest ever masthead editor, meaning like my name was on the masthead in the magazine of a national magazine. So my job kind of became fashion market editor, and that's where you go to all of these PR showrooms and you go to the designers and you see what they're creating and you kind of report back so that when the magazine is doing photo shoots or covering news, you know what the heart and the pulse of what is going on in the fashion world. Now, the second thing that really changed my life in this opportunity was that they hired a fashion director. So this is someone who was above me, and this woman's name was Nikki Schwan. And Nikki Schwan had been around for a while as a fashion stylist, etc. And everything changed really also because of Nikki. So one issue in Vibe, and this is I think probably over 10 years ago. So at the beginning of this person who I'm about to say's career, we put Nicki Minaj on the cover, and I think Vibe was the first kind of major magazine to put her on a cover. So it was styled by Nikki Schwan, a different Nikki, but my boss, Nikki. And so I got to assist on that, and then Nicki Schwan had this rapport. Nicki, my boss, ended up becoming her stylist for a bunch of things, and Nicki Schwan, my boss, ended up styling a bunch of Nicki Minaj's like early stuff, like her album cover, her first album cover, the Super Bass music video, a bunch of music videos, and oftentimes I would get hired to assist her. So now I was learning about fashion styling, and I was able to go to these showrooms and go to these designers and get amazing clothes on loan, both for the magazine when we would do photo shoots, and now for celebrities as well. And so I was also trying to branch out and get celebrities to hire me to style them again, because I was really learning and getting access. And this was just amazing. Like, I was really living the dream. I was 20, 21 years old in New York, going to Fashion Week, going to parties, meeting celebrities, living the life. Meanwhile, I'm in debt. I have no money. I'm living really off of credit card debt, but I think a lot of people in New York are in that type of situation when they're in fashion, where your life looks really glamorous, but you're getting paid peanuts. That's often how things work in fashion. So I think that by the time just before I was 22, I was starting to feel this burnout. Like, I had already been in the fashion industry in New York for really, at that point, nearly 4 years, working from the ground up. And it was starting to get a little bit monotonous, to be honest. And I was like, all right, well, what's next? And I had a chance encounter with someone who, again, would change my life forever. So I go to this really fabulous art party opening in downtown New York. I think it was at Cipriani's. And I see this girl, very glamorous, smoking Yves Saint Laurent cigarettes. And I go up to her because she's the most interesting person in the party, and we strike up a conversation. Now, I don't want to reveal this person's identity, but suffice it to say, she was the daughter of a major celebrity in the United States, and we quickly became really good friends. Like, she became my best friend. We just had these crazy times together. So this person was living about half the year in New York and half the year in India, and she had aspirations to be a fashion designer. And she already had her set up in India, and she said, look, why don't you come with me to India and help me with my fashion line? And I jumped at that opportunity. I had never been to Asia before, but I was starting to get, at that point in my life, a little bit into yoga, a little bit into spirituality. This is the time that Eat, Pray, Love had just come out. I think the book, not the movie, or maybe around the same time, I don't know. So this was like percolating in my mind, and I knew that I wanted to change from the New York fashion world. So I made a very drastic, and looking back on it, courageous step, which was to leave that job, leave the magazine, give up my apartment in New York, sell everything, and go to India with her. And that truly changed my life, because there in India, wow, I mean, it just blew my mind. First of all, again, my very first time in Asia, but to be thrown into India as someone from a small town in America, even having lived in New York, I mean, it's just so eye-opening. And I also was really lucky that this girl, again, being the daughter of a celebrity and whatever connection she already had in India, I kind of was introduced to the elite society of Delhi. So again, this is all about, my life has all been about kind of connections and about happenstance and meeting someone who kind of has pushed me along on my journey. So I am invited with her to a party one night at some mansion, basically, in Delhi. They're called farmhouses because these are these giant mansions that are kind of just outside of the city with a lot of land. And I meet a girl there whose mother is a fashion manufacturer and also went to NYU, and we hit it off and we become friends. And meanwhile, as I'm helping my friend with her fashion label, and I'm seeing all of these incredible fabrics in India, all of these silks and brocades, like, my mind is just like firing on all cylinders. I'm so inspired by what I'm seeing, and I want to make some pieces for myself. So I find a tailor there, and I just make some pieces, like some brocade pants and things that I'm excited about. They were made terribly, but I didn't know anything. I mean, really, again, I'm not from a fashion background. Even at NYU, I did not study fashion. I was studying languages. So I have no traditional training in fashion. Everything that I have done at this point, I've just learned on the go. But again, no real formal education in design, anything like that. So at the end of 2 months in India, as my visa there is about to expire, my friendship with that girl that had brought me there really went south, like to the point that we weren't even speaking anymore. And I was at one of the lowest points in my life. because I was really hurt over this broken friendship and I knew I needed to go back to America, but I had no idea what I was going back to because I had left my job, I had given up my apartment. I, at this point, really had nothing. So I go back to the United States and I am a little bit at my parents' place for a couple weeks and then also staying with a friend during New York Fashion Week, because I'd come back, I think it was right before New York Fashion Week. And I still had a little bit of access and credentials because of my past. So I go to New York Fashion Week and I'm wearing these clothes that I had actually designed in India, and I get photographs and I'm thinking, this could be interesting, you know, maybe I can do something with this. But again, I had no idea. I didn't have any experience truly with, you know, making a fashion line or doing any of that kind of stuff. I mean, my past at this point had been PR, editorial, a little bit of marketing, and fashion styling. So I'm really trying to figure out what's the next path in my life. And I decide I want to go and move to Los Angeles. I'm kind of finished with New York, and I had taken a trip when I had come back from India, kind of across the country, and I fell in love with LA. Now, I had been to LA once or twice before on styling jobs when I was assisting Nikki Schwan, and I just always thought, wow, LA is so much better than New York. It has amazing weather, and you know, I just loved it. Like, I could feel it in my bones that that's where I wanted to be. So with the support and blessing kind of my parents, without whom it would not have been possible, I moved to Los Angeles. They helped me get my first apartment there, but again, I had to hustle, so I needed a job, and I took whatever job I could get, which was at that time like a fashion PR company. And within a month I was fired because, again, I'm just not made to work, one, in an office, or two, in PR. That's really not my thing. Now, thank God that Nikki Schwan really decided again to take me under her wings, and I assisted her more for some other jobs, and that was giving me a little bit of money. And then I was assisting another major stylist who had these major clients. He didn't like me. I actually went to the Grammys to assist him for his client, and he yelled at me because my shoes were making too much noise. So I had a lot of really interesting experiences in LA, but this kind of time in LA led me to much closer to where I am today. So I have a family friend who really kind of took an interest in me and saw what I had done in India with my samples and said, if you want to do this and you have the connections, I'll invest in you. And with a little bit of money, I mean, which was actually a lot of money to me at the time, that was my seed capital. So if you guys remember this girl that I had mentioned that I met at a party in India, whose mom was a manufacturer, a fashion manufacturer for like big stuff, like she had manufactured for Forever 21. She also took me under her wings, my friend put us together, and I designed my first set of samples. They were really terrible, they weren't made well, but it was something. And I had connections in LA from being a stylist and all of this, so I started to kind of hustle and get it out there and try to get celebrities to wear it or get it in magazines or this and that, and I was just taking these baby steps and, you know, trying to get the items in stores and trying to, also I did private orders, so I would have either wealthy people or celebrities buy my stuff. Like the biggest thing for me was when Kesha's stylist actually commissioned a custom outfit for her that she wore. So I was like, slowly coming, along with this little label that I had. But again, I was really dumb. I was so young. I was 22, 23 years old. And with this investment money, I just spent it really badly. And I was going back and forth to India, which was very expensive, to produce collections and just doing kind of everything wrong in hindsight. At about 25 years old, I kind of hit a wall where I had spent basically all the seed capital and I was nearly bankrupt personally and professionally. Like I wasn't earning enough revenue in this business to keep it going. And now I am really at another inflection point in my life and truly at a low of lows where I'm feeling incredibly guilty about having lost this investment money. I have no idea what I'm going to do because this is kind of my whole identity now was tied up in this label that I had created. So again, happenstance and being in the right place at the right time and really believing in yourself. I made one final sale to a shop. And again, I'll tell you guys how hard I was hustling, because this is what you need to do, I think, in any kind of industry if you want to get ahead. I would go store to store like a traveling salesman with my samples and try to get them to buy it. So one kind of high-end shop in Southern California, I think it was in La Jolla or something, some rich Southern California town, bought my stuff. I think they bought enough pieces, the order was maybe worth like just under $2,000. And that was just enough money to buy a round-trip ticket to India, which is where I knew I had to go, because India had always been my source of inspiration, and I had friends there, and I had possibilities, just to maybe go and see what would happen next. So I go back to India with this last couple $1,000s that I have, meanwhile, again, sinking in debt. But everything changed for me on that trip. My friend told me, you should go to Rishikesh. It's a small spiritual town in northern India at the foothills of the Himalayas. And there I discovered a product that changed my life and continues to be the source of my livelihood, business, everything today. So if you guys know my channel, if you know me, I'm the founder of a company called Tibetan socks. And that is where this product came from, was that trip in the foothills of the Himalayas where I found a prototype of these hand-knit woolen socks. They told me that they were made by Tibetans. And I just had a light bulb moment. Something went off in my mind. I had bought a pair for myself, and they were amazing. And I had never seen anything like this before in the United States. These really warm, cozy slipper socks that at the time for me there were absolutely essential. It was the middle of winter time in the Himalayas, and I wore nothing but these slipper socks. So the name came to me, Tibetan socks, and immediately I was like, I need to make this into a business. Now, I am so broke. I can't even afford to buy 20 pairs of these socks. So my friend loaned me 75 US dollars to buy these 20 pairs that I brought back to the United States in my suitcase, and that is where I started from. I mean, absolutely nothing. And my first website I put up, I had no money to hire anybody to do this for me, so I was just like learning everything and doing everything on a shoestring. And I think that this was actually a really good education for me, because I had to learn everything myself and really understand how to budget and watch every penny, because I had been so profligate when I had investment income that, now that wasn't a possibility to be like that. I had to be spendthrift and I had to watch every penny. I set up the business and I actually started getting orders pretty quickly. And I remember every time I would get an order, I was just absolutely beyond elated. Like, I was like, this is incredible. Because mind you, when I had the high-end women's wear design business before, I was hustling hard. Like, I was lugging these samples from place to place and begging stores and trying to get attention and doing everything and not getting anywhere. And now I was just like, I could be sitting and then poof, there was an order. And I had all of the collection in my house, and every time there was an order, I would pack it up myself and I would write a handwritten note to the customer and I would drive to the post office. Like, I was doing everything. And at that time I had a friend, I call her like a guardian angel. She was so sweet, and she invested a couple $1,000s for me to get like the next 150 units of this product. And that's really how my business started. It was so slow, and it was like this, and little by little, just building the name and trying to make the website a little bit better and trying to make the photos a little bit better, and really learning as I went along. Again, no experience in e-commerce up to this point. Like, I'm just learning everything. No experience in advertising, no experience in any of the things that I'm doing. I'm just a hustler. And really, I think that's the point of this video. And if you want to do anything, is you have to hustle and not wait for someone to give something to you. You have to just do it. So now another life-changing moment happens. At this time in my life, I'm really into yoga. I'm really into meditation. I'm really into like my spiritual practice. One day I'm sitting in meditation and I had a epiphany, and I thought, hey, why don't I try to get this product on the Home Shopping Network, which is a TV shopping channel in the United States. Now, this idea didn't just come out of nowhere. I had pitched HSN a product maybe a couple years prior. I was friends with a famous fashion stylist in America. We had become friends when I was in New York, and for a brief period of time I actually lived I was his roommate in Los Angeles. And together, we pitched the Home Shopping Network. He actually knew the president of the Home Shopping Network, so he got the connection. We pitched it. Ultimately, they didn't buy that product that we pitched them, but I still had the contact information from when we were going back and forth, and I thought, hey, why don't I see if they're interested in this product? So out of nowhere, I send them an email and I say, hey, maybe you guys remember me. We were talking for, a couple of years ago about this other product. This is what I'm doing now. Would you be interested? Can I send you samples? And they said yes. I send them samples, and guess what? They want to buy the product. And eventually, I get to go on TV with this, and this is what changes my business from something that's in my closet to something national. And at the time also, I'm like, all right, I need to take things to the next step. I get on Amazon, I send all my inventory to Amazon so that I'm no longer packing up every order individually and sending it to the customer and going to the post office, doing all of that. So I'm really scaling my business now. I'm on live television selling this stuff, and I'm getting these orders from HSN. The first one was like $30,000, and then again, it was so successful and it sold out in 10 minutes that then they ordered again a couple months later, and then the next year it was like $60,000 or something, and I'm like, wow, I'm really getting somewhere. And for me, this was the most money I had ever seen in my life, up to this point. I remember getting that transfer of like $65,000 in my bank account from Home Shopping Network, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm rich, I've made it. So that's kind of, from where that is to where I am now is not that far removed. It's just been, a few years since then, and I'm no longer selling on HSN. I do everything direct to customer through my website and through Amazon, and my business is bigger than ever. But wow, we've talked already for what? I'm looking at the clock, like 30 something minutes. I need another sip. That is really that's where I am now, and that's where I started. It's been a journey. I'm 33 years old now. I started at 18, so it's been 15 years of me hustling in the fashion industry to get to where I am today. So it's by no means an overnight success story. It's been a lot of hustling. It's been a lot of ups and downs, and I've experienced failure and starting over numerous times within that. I think that the point, let me take a sip. I think that the point to make here is that when you have a dream, you just follow it. And sometimes you follow it into really dark places where there's no path that's there for you, but you just have to create your own path. And at least my personal story really has been about that. It's been that ever since I was a young kid, I would dream of New York City. I would dream of big city lights. I would dream of this life that was more interesting and more creative and more glamorous than the one that I was born into. And again, I had no real connections to that world. The only leg up that I ever had was, as I mentioned in the very beginning, when I got a job at this PR firm, but that wasn't even a fashion PR firm, that was just something. But again, it was sometimes you just need like one person to give you that in, and then, as I mentioned, all of these other people that I met along my path who, were like maybe guardian angels in human form that were, pushing me along. And I don't want to sound so conceited to think that they were just there only for me and my path, but they were these people who kind of shone a light, that allowed me to take a few steps forward. And my story is possible uniquely because of all of these amazing women who inspired me in my life. My aunt who inspired me just because of who she was, and my friend who inspired me to go to India, and Nikki, my boss at Vibe, who opened up a whole world to me, and then the people in India that I was connected to. Like, everything happened because of these people and these connections. But again, none of it would have happened if I didn't have the dream and if I didn't believe against the odds somehow that it was possible for me as a small town kid from a shitty state like New Jersey could make it in this fashion world. And nowadays, it's in a sense way easier because anybody with a phone can become an influencer. If you have a point of view, if you have an interesting sense of style, you can develop really quickly a following. And that nowadays is your entry into the fashion world. And I think that a lot of influencers I mean, they make so much money, these people. But, you know, the really smart ones are the ones who can parlay their audience into creating a product so that, you know, long after they themselves are no longer maybe that influencing or interesting, they have a real business behind them. I feel really lucky at this point that I'm kind of doing things opposite. Like, I have a real business and I do this YouTube channel as a way just to connect, and I really enjoy making these videos. And even that, I mean, I learned how to do video editing and video production, all of this stuff, just by doing it. I didn't go to school for this stuff. I'm a complete autodidact, and I think that's also, again, a really important point that I want to make here for anybody who is looking to break into the fashion industry. Don't ask for permission, and don't look for someone to teach you stuff. You have to go out and hustle and learn it yourself, because a lot of these things are very cutting edge. I mean, there would have been nobody to teach me about e-commerce marketing and building an e-commerce store because it was so new. I mean, nowadays I'm positive I could be hired by a university to teach an e-commerce course, because I have from zero built a business over, you know, that's worth over $1 million from nothing, you know? So this stuff you have to just, it's like trial and error, and you have to be willing to educate yourself. And nowadays as well, like, everything is available to you from YouTube, and like, it's so easy to learn for free nowadays. I think that anybody who pays to go to school is wasting their money, especially if you want to be in the fashion business, because there's no education that can prepare you or they can give you the entree like just doing it and hustling and making connections and learning as you go. So I feel like this has been so long-winded, but I really hope that it inspires some people. I think that had I watched this video when I was 18, it would have really, I don't know, it would have really been like a light bulb moment for me, and I think that it would have saved me some kind of missteps that I made along the way. So, wow, that's been a really long video, and thank you guys if you've watched all the way to the end, and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more kinds of fashion content, because I'm really excited to be announcing something very soon. Really big news from me. And anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching, and until the next time, take care, and I'll see you later.